Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier with another presentation looking at naval power, this time with a focus on technology. Now, as I said in my intro to my presentation on air power, if a question on naval power specifically asks about technological development, you need to have a sound knowledge of those developments. Let me quote from a past mark scheme. There needs to be specific knowledge exhibited of the nature and impact of the technology. So even though usually the question isn't specific to technological developments, it's best to be ready for one. And hopefully this presentation will help you in that. A word or two first on the different types of ship that were on the seas in World War I. Capital ships are the big fellas, battleships. They have well-armoured hulls and big, powerful guns. The dreadnoughts were superior battleships. Battle cruisers would still be classed as capital ships, but carry slightly smaller guns, and their hulls are not quite so thick, but this made them faster than the battleships. The idea is that they are faster than other ships with the same firepower, or almost the same, and so can outrun them, as well as those with less firepower who they can chase down. Armoured cruisers packed a powerful punch too, and were still important in World War I, but had been eclipsed by the battle cruiser. Finally, there are light cruisers. They are smaller, have less protective armour, and have less firepower. Destroyers are fast and nippy, that is, manoeuvrable. Originally, they were designed as a defence against torpedo boats. They were used as escort ships defending the capital ships, or in the convoys. But back to the big fellas. I don't think that many people are that aware that aircraft carriers were developed during the war. They didn't play a significant role, but they were used, mostly for reconnaissance, but some airstrikes were launched from them too. After the Battle of Jutland, the British set about learning from the lessons the battle had handed them. Anti-flash precautions were made, particularly on the battle cruisers, in addition to extra armour plating for the ships under construction. Both ships and crews would be better prepared for fighting at night too. Also, the British set about improving their shells, as they had been shown to have a tendency to break up on impact at Jutland, losing their explosive power in the process. And on shore, the way in which naval intelligence was passed on to ships at sea was improved too. What Germany turned to in order to impose its own blockade was the Unterseebooten, or U-boat. That is, submarine warfare, or what the historian Martin Gilbert described as the tyranny of the torpedo. At the outset of war, Germany had less than 30 U-boats, and they only had a short range which limited their use. After the Battle of Jutland, though, Germany built in total more than 300 U-boats and transferred crews from surface ships to them. Their range was also considerably improved. They could stay at sea for up to 2 months, though had to constantly surface in order to recharge their batteries. But with losses, Germany had only about 130 U-boats at the end of the war. Britain, incidentally, had 76 submarines at the outset of the war and built another 146. Submarine warfare wasn't just one way. However, whatever the numbers, Germany's U-boat campaign was enough to genuinely threaten Britain with defeat. Britain, as a small island, relied totally on sea routes to adequately supply its military and its civilian population. The longer the war went on, the more critical supplies became. This was total war, and both sides were attempting to blockade the other. At the outset of submarine warfare on merchant shipping in 1915, the British responded with a number of ad hoc measures, but no overall strategy. They mined the German ports with mines anchored to the seabed to try and catch the submarines as well as ships, but German minesweepers were used to cut the cables. They also laid minefield barrage nets. The northern barrage was huge, a series of nets stretching from the Orkneys to the Norwegian coast, almost 400 kilometres. They also armed merchant ships, and they endlessly patrolled the seas. The submarines usually had to be at periscope depth in order to fire a torpedo, and so, if spotted, could be rammed. But it was both a primitive and a desperate operation. They even used airships and planes, including seaplanes, to hunt them down. They also used what came to be known as the Q-ship, which was highly controversial. Seemingly unarmed merchant ships were deployed to lure U-boats to surface in order to give fair warning, yet enforce their blockade. Once on the surface, hidden guns would then fire on the submarine. But in truth, even when a submarine was found, there was not the technology to detect its direction, nor its depth. Depth charges were released, but it was guesswork, and a depth charge had to explode within 5 metres of a submarine to sink it, within 10 metres to damage it, enough to force it to the surface. Now, something that might not be covered in the reading you've done. Radio actually transformed naval warfare in World War I, improving as the war progressed. Using Morse code, it enabled ships to communicate with each other, as well as for command centres to keep in touch with fleets, and so better coordinate fleet movements. It helped Britain's distant blockade, for example. This meant, though, that it would be possible to listen in to enemy messages, and if these could be decoded, it would provide critically important intelligence. Britain set up wireless stations along their east coast to monitor German radio traffic, and when the British gained the German secret naval ciphers, it helped influence responses. And even when messages couldn't be decoded, direction-finding equipment enabled the triangulation of transmissions so that navies could determine the location of enemy ships, including U-boats, though they could only transmit radio messages when they had surfaced. So, a bit of a mind-sweeping review of the technology of the war at sea for you. And I do apologise for that, but I just couldn't resist. The war at sea was important. It was very much a part of the war of attrition, starving the home front of food as well as the military of supplies. Germany attempted to win the war with its unrestricted submarine warfare, but in fact it was the British hunger blockade that did much more damage to German morale. And of course, it is very much a part of total war. So when you come to revise for World War I, don't forget the war at sea. And don't forget, I have more detailed notes, which I can send you if you would like me to. Just email me at historymadeeasier@gmail.com And as I always say, be assured I will not pester you with emails. I haven't the time, energy, or inclination to be doing that. But if I can help, that's another matter. Anyway, as always, thank you for listening. And as always, let me wish you the best of luck in your studies. Cheers.